Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got a special video for you today where we've taken lists from the Discord, from the community, one list from every detachment for the Necrons, and I'm going to be showing you this today. So we've got 5 lists virtually for this video. Got a bit of a new theme going off. You'll have to let me know if you like it or not in the comments down below. Let's kick this straight off, I suppose, with getting into the Obeisance Phalanx. Now the Obeisance Phalanx has got a list from, I think that's pronounced Royce. Hopefully I've got that correct. If not, apologies. And on the Discord they have sent me this list to look at, I suppose. Let's kick this off then. So the Obeisance Phalanx, if you're not aware, is the detachment where Overlords, Lich Guard, Triarch units are getting the +1 to wound in a battle round against a selected unit. Just in case you weren't aware. Right, let's get into this list then. So kicking this off with the Warlord is the Silent King. 420 points, he can fight, he can shoot, he can buff, he can do everything really. He's not going to gain benefits directly from the detachment rule because he's not an Overlord, a Triarch model, or has he got the Lich Guard keyword? No, he hasn't. But it's a great amplifier in terms of damage. In this list we've also got an Overlord with the Translocation Shroud, and the enhancement that is on this Overlord is the Eternal Conqueror. Eternal Conqueror 25 points, making this 110 points. And while the bearer's unit's on the objective, you get to basically reroll your hit rolls. That's what he does. He comes with the Overlord's Blade and the Resurrection Orb. Sticking with this same unit for a moment, we're taking a Plasmancer, 55 point Plasmancer, no upgrades, no options there, just stock. I'm not going to go through every piece of the actual data card or anything like that. I'm just going to say Plasmancer and move on. We've then got a unit of 10 Immortals, which will be going with the Overlord with the Shroud and the Plasmancer. 140 points, they're taking the Tesla Carbines. So when you do have the Plasmancer with the 5+ critical hits for your Tesla Carbines with sustained hits 2 is nice. That Translocation Shroud also allows you to advance through models. So if they did want to advance, which they would because they're carrying Tesla, they'll be doing that with a 6-inch move, or a 6-inch advance, and the entire unit's going to have the Overlord keyword, so it will relate to the detachment rule as well. Next we've got another character to talk about, an 85 point Overlord, again with the Translocation Shroud, again Overlord's Blade, Resurrection Orb, stock now, pretty much is what it is. A unit of 10 Lich Guard, carrying the Hyperphase Swords and Dispersion Shields. So they've got the nice 4+ invulnerable save, just to keep them a bit more tanky, a bit more durable on the objectives. They've got the Lich Guard keyword, so they will apply to the detachment rule. We've got a third Overlord with a Translocation Shroud, 85 points again, Overlord's Blade, Resurrection Orb again, and another unit of Lich Guard, 10 units, or 10 models in the unit. Exactly the same mirror image, in fact, as the previous unit. On to some heavy stuff now. We've got a Doomsday Arc for 200 points, using that Doomsday Cannon. In fact, we've got 2 of those. Another Doomsday Arc, so 2 Doomsday Arcs cannons, 200 points per model there. We've got some Triumph Praetorians for 120 points for the 5. They are carrying the Particle Casters and the Void Blades, so they're good at shooting, they're good in melee. They've got the Triumph keyword, so they're going to get the +1 to wound against a selected unit. Nice. And we've got another unit of those, in fact. And what's great about those is they've got Deep Strike as well, so if you need a bit of secondary scoring units within this list, that's the ones. There they are. They're quite quick as well. And to cap the list off, we've got a Triarch Stalker for 125 points, carrying the Particle Shredder. So I've got the entire list for you there, as you can see. And I'm going to go through some quick tactics. I'm going to be reading from a little bit of a script here because this isn't my list, this is Reese's list. So safe to presume that each Overlord will go with the Lich Guard units as well as the Immortals. So one will go with the Immortals and the Plasmancer. Another one will go with the Lich Guard, the third will go with the Lich Guard, so on. Now the one with the enhancement would probably be with the Immortals because you get all the rerolls to the hit rolls, and then you're getting all the rerolls to your wound rolls because they're Immortals. That's probably where that's going to go with that list. And the Plasmancer, as we mentioned, critical hits on a 5+, which is lovely. Absolutely lovely when you've got sustained hits 2 on your Immortals. Praetorian's going to be deep striking in for secondary objectives, whether it's engaging all fronts, behind enemy lines, deploy teleport homer, investigate signal, cleanse, and so on. They'll be the action kind of unit. Then we've got Lich Guard, which will probably just move into the no man's land objectives, carrying the sword and shield, just bunkering down, defending it. That's all they're going to really do. And those Doomsday Arcs will just hold back. They don't want to move. If they do move, they're going to lose their wounds. And they're also losing their heavy keyword as well. So they're going to stay stationary, ideally on our home objective marker, just to put a bit of OC on there. Now the Immortals and the Trike Stalker seem to have a bit of a free role within this list. So it's of course always mission dependent, but they could maybe assist in the No Man's Land with the Lich Guard potentially. And the Silent King of course is just taking front and centre, and it's buffing everything around it. The Immortals, the Lich Guard, possibly the Praetorians if they're within range, the Stalker of course. So yeah, that was the first list from the Obeisance Phalanx. Let's move into the next list here, which was going to be the Hypercrypt Legion, and it is Stewie's list. So shout out to Stewie. So let's begin this list then. Hypercrypt Legion, of course, is the hyperphasing rule where end of your opponent's turn, you can take up to 3 units off the battlefield if they're not within engagement range, and then bring them back in your movement phase, reinforcement step of your movement phase. So starting us off with a Plasmancer, we've put 80 points here because there's an enhancement, which is the Arisen Tyrant. So it's a 25 point enhancement. Basically, gives the unit rerolls 1s to hit, and if they're being set up on the battlefield this turn, they're rerolling everything, which is nice. We've also got a Royal Warden within the same unit, and he's also got an enhancement. 20 point enhancement, making him 60 points in total, giving the unit Deep Strike. Lovely. So Royal Warden and a Plasmancer going in with 20 Necron Warriors. Different, very different. 20 Necron Warriors with the Gorse Reapers. There will be some sort of strategy. I'll talk to you about that in the tactics section in a moment. So 20 Warriors, Gorse Reapers with the Royal Warden with Deep Strike, and the Plasmancer with the rerolls, the hit rolls effectively. Next unit in, we've got a 60 points Chronomancer. Chronomancer is normally 50 points, but with that enhancement Dimensional Overseer, you're going to be able to add 1 additional unit into the hyperphasing ability basically. So you can get up to 4 now. So up to 4 hyperphase units. I think this was more of a case of there's 10 points spare at the end of the list. Let's throw that in. The Chronomancer's going with some Immortals, 10 Immortals, 140 points with the Gorse Blasters this time. Not the Tesla Carbines, the Gorse Blasters. That Chronomancer obviously allows the unit to move after shooting. And again, we'll see in the tactics section how that can work and synergize with other parts of this list. We've got a second Chronomancer within the list. No enhancement here, just a 60 point model. And another unit of 10 Immortals, again with the Gorse Blasters. Another character, we've got the Hexmark Destroyer, 70 points there. Destroyer model, of course, has the Deep Strike and all the pistols. There's no enhancements on him. We've then got a Locust Lord, which I like Locust Lords. Locust Lords, selected with the Lord's Blade and a Resurrection Orb. And of course, when you bring a Locust Lord, most of the time you're bringing him because of the Locust Destroyers. There's going to be 6 of those. They're carrying their Gorse cannons for 180 points for the 6. We've got Catan in the list, 270 point Void Dragon. These are absolutely massive at the moment. All of the Catans really are good. This one's specifically good against vehicles, but it's still good against most things anyway. And we've got another character, an epic hero, Illuminazares. Illuminazares, 160 points. He's got the buff and the debuff of the AP, and a few unique abilities that we'll talk about in a moment. What else we got in this list? We've got 3 Tomb Blades for 75 points. They're carrying twin Tesla Carbines and Shadow Looms. So the Shadow Looms are of course the stealth ability, which is obviously nice. You always pick that. And the twin Tesla Carbines, I've got Assault, which is great. Sustain hits 2, which is nice. Twin Linked as well, which is also nice. And it's a unit that can move after shooting, which is double nice. So that's the Tomb Blades. We have then got a Necron Monolith with the Death Rays. 350 points with the Death Rays. A nice anti-tank kind of unit, but also very good for movement shenanigans, especially in this detachment. Then we come on to some Canoptek Scarabs, more of a screening kind of unit and an action kind of monkey kind of unit. 40 points for a minion unit of 3, another minion unit of 3 again for 40 points, and that actually caps off the list. So that's the list entirely there, and we'll go through some of those tactics. So what Stewie has said to me is, well, the big play kind of starts at the end of your opponent's first turn. Because what you need to do is, one of the units that you need to do, you've got an option of 4, but one of them needs to be the Immortals. And there's a reason for it. So when it gets to your turn 2, your movement phase, you want to be deep striking those 10 immortals in using the Cosmic Precision stratagem. Now, to use that stratagem, you need to either have deep strike, which they don't, or they need to have hyperphased in the previous turn. I know the wording is a bit weird with that stratagem, but that's how I read it. They need to have just hyperphased, so they would have just hyperphased, so they can use Cosmic Precision, which means they can come in anywhere on the battlefield as long as they're more than 3 inches away from enemy models. So that's step 1 of Stewie's plan. Now, you want to be landing them as close to an objective as possible, ideally within 5 inches, because, well, there's a reason why, and we'll tell you about it in a moment. Next, you're going to take your 20 warriors, which do have deep strike because of the Royal Warden's enhancement. You're going to deep strike them naturally, turn 2, and you want to put them as close to the immortals as you possibly can. Of course, you're not going to get as close because they were only 3 inches away, whereas a normal deep strike is 9 inches away. So you want to get them as close as you possibly can. Then what you need to do is you get your monolith and you're deep striking it in. You're deep striking it in. Now, maybe it started on the battlefield and you hyperphased it out. You'll be bringing it back in now. Of course, this is very dependent on space. If you're going up against like orcs and stuff like that, there likely ain't going to be space for this kind of tactic and synergy. But sometimes there is space for this, so you whack your monolith in and you're going to be using your Eternity Gate to be bringing in Illuminazares. Now, he could be on the battlefield, he could be in reserves, it doesn't really matter. The Eternity Gate will take him from wherever he is. So you're bringing in Illuminazares and you're ensuring that he's within 3 inches of the Immortals and he's within 3 inches of the Warriors. So he's buffing both of those units. Now, when it gets to your shooting phase, those Warriors will be shooting first. So they're going to have full rerolls because of the Plasmancer's Horizon Tyrant enhancement, and they've just entered the battlefield. So complete full rerolls to hit. You're going to be fishing for 5+ rolls here because you've got critical hits on a 5+ with lethal. So you may as well fish. Don't forget, you're now -2 AP as well because of Illuminazares. So you start off with the Warriors, then you move on to the Immortals. Now, you need to actually ensure the Immortals can fire, but I'm sure they will be able to. Once they've done their payload, they've shot, they can then move because the Chronomancer's ability allows them to move 5 inches after shooting. This should get toes on objectives because we were only 3 inches away from enemy units, so you should be on an objective now. You've just moved very close to one, and if there were units screening it, you'd probably just remove the unit by using the Warriors and the Immortals. That unit should be gone, or minimal, which shouldn't really prevent your Immortals from stepping on. So the Immortals are now on the objective with OC as well, OC 2 per model. I mean, if you got lucky, Illuminazares could have even snuck out with the Eternity Gate onto the objective as well. But there's plenty of OC there with the Immortals. Now, this list overall has a total of 3 units that can shoot, then move after shooting. You've got the 2 Immortal units with the Chronomancers and the Tomb Blades. So you could literally use this Cosmic Precision trick repeatedly, because you've got 3 units that can be hyperphased and then just bring them back in and then use the trick over and over and over. Now, as for the rest of the list, I mean, you've got, well, pretty much everything else does what they say on the tin, really. Catan just kills stuff, the Void Dragon's just going to be killing stuff, Scarabs are going to be screening stuff, the Locusts are going to be shooting stuff, and the Hexmark's going to be scoring stuff. So the rest of the list is kind of what you'd expect it to do. I mean, the Hexmark in particular is really good because you can keep reusing that deep strike because of the hyperphase ability, which is very handy for secondary objectives. If you pull behind enemy lines, there you go, he can do it. Bring him back in your opponent's turn. Then you go pull another card, and maybe this one is deploy teleport homers, send him back in a new location to do another thing. So really good unit for the Hypercrypt Legion. So that was Stewie's Hypercrypt Legion list. Okay, on to the Awakened Dynasty, or Dynasty, whatever you want to call it. I think is it the Americans that say Dynasty and the British say Dynasty? I say Dynasty, whatever, doesn't matter. So this is from Jar SS8, one of our, well, he pretty much comments on every video, doesn't he? You probably know who he is out in the comments. He's got the Awakened Dynasty list today. Let's start this off with the Technomancer, 60-point Technomancer. No gimmicks, he is what he is. He's going to be healing a unit within 6 inches, D3 lost wounds, and he can provide a feel no pain save of a 5+. Cool, one of our best characters in fact. Next character, we've got a Locust Lord for 100 points. The reason it's 100 points and not 80 points is because there's an enhancement on him, and that enhancement is the Veil of Darkness. The trusty old Veil of Darkness relic, 20 points, once per battle of course, at the end of your opponent's turn. If you're not within engagement range, you can come off the battlefield and re-enter in your next movement phase, more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Which is cool. He's carrying the Lord's Blade and the Resurrection Orb. I think that's the go-to loadout for a Locust Lord realistically. There is a second Locust Lord, 115 points this one, because there is another enhancement in this list, the Phasal Subjugator even, which is the 6-inch aura for a +1 to the hit rolls for all units that are not characters. So that's going to be applied to some other units. We'll get to that in the tactics. Again, Lord's Blade, again, Resurrection Orb, standard. There is a third Locust Lord within this list, 80-point model, no enhancement. Just stock now. Stock, Lord's Blade, Resurrection Orb. Next character is the Void Dragon. Seems to be quite a popular Catan, this one, the Void Dragon. I'm not seeing much of the Nightbringer in these lists. Void Dragon, 270, and absolute animal, as we know. There's a second Catan in this list, the Transcendent Catan shard. I've not really seen him much since the index, really. Since the Codex came out, not really seen much of the Transcendent, but he's in this list. 275 points. He can advance and basically relocate on the battlefield more than 9 inches away. Pretty cool. Then we move on to the meat of the list. We've got 6 Canoptek Wraiths for 220, carrying the Particle Casters and the Vicious Claws. So that's kind of my standard loadout. Most people, I think, go for that loadout. So 6 of those. We've got 5 Death Marks, 65 points. They've got Deep Strike and the Precision Weapons, which are great. Locust Destroyers, we've got 6 of them with their Gorse Cannons. I mean, you kind of saw that coming because of the amount of Locust Lords within the list. And in fact, we've got another unit of 6 Locust Destroyers. So that's a total of 12 Locust Destroyers there. So 2 units of 6. Now the final Locust Lord is not going to be going with Locust Destroyers. He's going to be going with Locust Heavy Destroyers. So 3 of those were the Emetic Exterminators. That's the only way to really play a Locust Lord with the Locust Heavy Destroyers, by having these Exterminator weapons. There's no point putting one with the Destructors, in my opinion. These Exterminators are absolutely brutal. Don't know if you've ever used them with a Locust Lord. 5+ critical hit rolls, and these have already got sustained hits. 1 rapid fire. There's a lot of shots coming out of it. A great combination, one of my favourites. We're not stopping there with the Locust stuff though. We've got a unit of 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Gorse Destructors, so the strength 14 weapons with -4 AP and a flat 6 damage. And in fact, to top it off, we've got another unit of them, 3 more. So 6 in total of the Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Gorse Destructors. And that's what I get for not changing the battery before recording. Let's carry this on. So there was a total of 9 Locust Heavy Destroyers, 6 of them with the Destructors, 3 of them with the Exterminators. So that's the entire list there. In a nutshell, you can see the list on the screen. Tactics wise, so all the destroyers are hitting on 2s, whether it's from command protocols, whether it's from the enhancement, the Phasal Subjugator, or simply from the heavy keyword. They're all going to be hitting on 2s, which is brilliant. But all of those destroyer units, except for the 2 Gorse Destructor units, will have critical hits on a 5+ because of those Locust Lords. Some of them are going to have sustained hits 1, some of them are going to have lethal, depends on which unit you're talking about. But there's a lot of critical hits there on 5+. All the destroyers have some form of rerolls due to their unit abilities, which is lovely. I mean, the Locust Heavies, they reroll 1s to wound against monsters and vehicles, and the Locust Destroyers reroll 1s to hit if they're the closest eligible unit, and if they're on an objective marker, you get to reroll all the hit rolls. So there's a lot of rerolls there. What else we got in this list? We've got the 2 Catan, which are great distraction units, aren't they? I mean, especially that Transcendent Catan, because it's going to be zipping across the battlefield with a trans-dimensional displacement ability, advancing, going anywhere more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Your opponent isn't going to like that, so they're going to be sort of distracted by not just the Transcendent Catan, but also the Void Dragon as well. Meanwhile, your Locust Heavy Destroyers and Locust Destroyers are just absolutely shooting the crap out of everything. You've got Death Marks in there doing what they do best with secondaries, deep strike them into enemy corners and just sit and wait for the right cards to pop up. Canoptek Wraiths, they can also assist with the Catan really, but what they need to be doing is in the no man's land just getting onto an objective and just sticking with it. You do need to be scoring some primaries. I think this list does lack slightly in terms of primary scoring. However, as it has actually said, this list mainly considers or concentrates on destruction rather than point scoring. I think he just wants to see the world burn. So let's move into the Annihilation Legion list. This is the Destroyer and Flayed one, really. List where you get the reroll to your charge roll and all that stuff. It's not the best detachment, but some people actually claim it's pretty good. So I'd love to see what this list turns out like. This is from Depresticon's list. Depresticon? Is that the right way of saying that? Depresticon's list. Yeah, I think that's right. So let's kick this off with a Hexmark Destroyer, 80 points because of the 10-point enhancement. I think this was spare points, so he's thrown this in there. And you're going to get extra AP on critical win rolls. It's not the best enhancement, but I think, like I said, 10 points spare, may as well throw it in. We've got a Locust Lord yet again, Lord's Blade yet again, Resurrection Orb yet again. 80 points, no enhancement there, and he's going to be going with 6 Locust Heavy Destroyers. No, 6 Locust Destroyers with the Gauss Cannons, 180 points for the 6. We've got another Locust Lord. They seem to be quite popular, you know. It's a shame you can't buy them. GW need to wake up to that. But yeah, another Locust Lord in the list. And another set of Locust Destroyers in the list with the Gauss. Moving further down the list, we've got a Scorpic Lord. I mean, you would expect a Scorpic Lord, at least one within these detachments. This one's 115 points because it's got an enhancement, the Eldritch Nightmare. 15 points. So destroy a cult unit, which he is. Start the fight phase. Each enemy unit within engagement range must take a battle shock test. I think that's pretty cool because you could be denying points, like secondary points. Maybe it's attempting target. Maybe they're trying to defend enemy stronghold or storm hostile objective, and you just literally remove their OC. Bosh, they're not scoring it. So that's a good little trick there. 15 points. He, of course, is going to be going with the Scorpic Destroyers, a unit of 6 of them, 200 points. They're going to be taking 2 plasma sights along with the unit, as you would. They're free, which will apply devastating wounds for a once per battle item. But there's 2 of them, so twice per battle item. Then we get on to the second Scorpic Lord within this list. It's 120 points. I think there's a mistake in the list that is provided, and I'll explain why. So, they've said that it's got the Eternal Madness enhancement on them, which is the Fight on Death enhancement, but in the notes that they've given me, they put Eternal Madness possibly for locking up a unit so that they can't be shot in the shooting phase. That would mainly, I think that would apply more to the Soulless Reaper enhancement to stop them from falling back, so I think there's just an error. So I'll change that. I'm going to presume that's what they meant, and I'm going to change that for the actual imagery that you're seeing on the screen. So they have got the Soulless Reaper stratagem, which is only 20 points, not 25. And basically, if a unit tries to fall back from your Scorpic Lord's unit, on a 3+, they cannot fall back. Which means you're going to be tied up in engagement range, which means they can't be shot at, which is what the notes actually said. So 120 points there for the Scorpic Lord. Again, going with 6 Scorpic Destroyers, 2 plasma sights, yeah, kind of standard. Right, we come on to the next units within this list. We've got 3 separate units here of Flayed ones, 5-man units, 70 points per unit. There's 3 of them, so a total of 210 points if you like. They've all got the Infiltrate keyword, so yeah, they could be actually deployed in the no man's land, providing that they're 9 inches away from enemy models and enemy deployment zone. Next in the list, we've got a unit of 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers, so 2, not 3, just 2. They've got the Gauss Destructors. In fact, there's 2 units of these. 2 units of Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Gauss Cannon, the Gauss Destructors rather. 50 points a model. Just a bit of anti-tank and a bit of a backline gun line. There's not much that's staying back within this list by the looks of it, apart from maybe the Locust Destroyers. That sort of looks like that's all that would maybe stay back, but their range isn't great, so probably not. We've then got some units of Ophidian Destroyers. We've got 2 units there. They've got the plasma sight within the unit, just the one because these units are minimal units, 3-man teams. And they've got the Tunneling Horrors ability, which is great because they can pop out of your end of your opponent's turn and come back in your reinforcement step. A little bit like hyperphasing, but this is the Annihilation Legion. So this is where Destroyers are doing hyperphasing, which is cool. And then the final units within this list is 2 units of Tomb Blades. Now the Tomb Blades have got, this is quite an advanced play here, so I'm going to go through this a little bit more in detail. 75 points for 3. 2 of them, they've got Particle Beamers, and one of them has twin Tesla carbine, because any number of models can swap out their weapons. Now the reason why they've gone with this loadout is as follows. If you were to advance the unit, and they all had particle beamers, and you advance with them, they won't be eligible to shoot. They simply will not be eligible to shoot because they're not assault weapons. By having one single twin Tesla carbine in the unit, if you chose to advance with them, you've still got the option of actually being eligible to shoot, because you've got one model in there that can shoot. And that one single model can be the one that's actually doing the action, such as cleanse, deploy, teleport, homer, and so on, purely because they're still eligible to shoot within the shooting phase. They've also got the Shadow Loom, so all three of them have that, which is the stealth ability. And yeah, these units are identical. There's 2 units of them. Again, both units have one single twin Tesla carbine with the assault keyword. So that is the full list there. And we're going to move into these tactics for the Annihilation Legion. So the flayed ones are going to be infiltrating, hoping for some early secondaries, or maybe to charge into the screens and so on. Cool. Tomb Blades, we've already mentioned the weapon loadouts, but they're going to also be using their speed to make other secondaries possible, such as behind enemy lines, engage on all fronts, because they are rapid and they can also move after shooting as well, with their unique ability. The Locust Destroyers have got criticals on a 5+ with lethal hits with their Gauss cannons, and because of the Locust Lord within the unit, so they can pop out and shoot where required. I mean, if you're firing onto objectives, enemy units on objectives, then you're going to get full rerolls. You're going to get full rerolls to hit because of their unique ability, so what you'll be doing is fishing for the 5+. There's no point in taking a 3 or a 4. You may as well fish and try and get 5+. You've still got great chances of still hitting again with the reroll, but you've got even more chances now of getting those lethal hits, which means you don't have to roll to wound. Scorpion Destroyers, they're just charging into the heavy armour. I mean, again, they're going to have lethals because of the Scorpion Lord now. So they've got lethals, possibly devastating wounds as well with the plasma sights. But anything with a bit of armour, they can go chopping it down. Ophidian Destroyers, they can start on the battlefield, which is something I don't always do, but you can start them on the battlefield as an anti-deep strike kind of unit, especially if you go second. And then you can take them off in your opponent's end of your opponent's second turn, to be bringing them into your second turn to deep strike them as you normally would. So it's just an anti-deep strike, especially if you do go second. Or you could just move them mid to late game standardly, because they are quite fast in general. And again, behind enemy lines, maybe it's capture enemy outposts, which is a lot of points. They could be doing stuff like that. Hexmark Destroyers also coming in from deep strike to either clear off some screens with the pistols, or again another screening and scoring option rather. And your opponent has to go back to chase the Hexmark Destroyer because of Lone Operative. Such an underrated ability. Your opponent has to go back and deal with it within 12 inches, but if they get within 12 inches, Overwatch, well, within 24 in fact, but I think the range of that weapon is only 18 anyway. And then lastly, you got Locust Heavy Destroyers. They just do their thing, don't they? From afar, 48-inch range, clearing vehicles and monsters from afar, providing that you've got a firing lane. They can just do it all day long. So that's the Annihilation Legion all summed up with that list. The next 2,000 point list is for the Canoptek Court. This one is from Alpha, who's one of our council members within the Discord, and they provided the following Canoptek Court list. Starting us off with Imhotep the Stormlord. Imhotep the Stormlord, 100 points. He's an epic hero, no enhancements of course. He's a CP farm for the list. Has his own bit of damage output as well, he's not too bad. We've got a Nightbringer for 255 points. There he is, I do like the Nightbringer. Absolute animal in melee, and not bad at range either. Gaze of Death is pretty good. Very resilient, as all the Catan are. Speaking of Catan, we've got the Void Dragon back in yet again. 270 point model there. So that's 2 Catan within this list. It's meant to be a Canoptek list. There's already 2 Catan in here and Imhotep. Brilliant, love it. Next we've got a 55 point Plasmancer, no gimmicks here. That is a Cryptek, so he will be providing the Cryptek keyword to the unit that he's going with. We've got a Technomancer, another Cryptek. This is 80 points because there is a Dimensional Sanctum enhancement on him to give the Infiltrator's ability to the unit that he goes with. So I'm presuming that will be Wraiths, it very likely will be. We'll get onto that in a moment. There's another Technomancer, this time 75 points because there's a 15 point enhancement on him. He's got the Hyperphasic Fulcrum. So while this bearer is leading a unit, if they're wholly within the power matrix, they get to reroll wound rolls of a 1. So that's the second Technomancer. Now into the bread and butter of the list, we've got 10 Immortals, 140 points with Tesla Carbines. Tesla Carbines, I would probably imagine that that Plasmancer we saw earlier goes with that. We'll talk about it in the tactics anyway. We've then got a Canoptek Doomstalker, 135 points. We've got another Canoptek Doomstalker, 135 points. They've got Overwatch on a 5+. They're going to be in the Power Matrix, re-rolling all the hit rolls. Damage 3, they're great. We've got a Canoptek Scarab unit, a minimum unit of 3 for 40 points. Just getting in the way of stuff, maybe doing the actions, cleanse and all that kind of jazz. Deploy Teleport Homer, investigate signals. Yeah, anti-deep strike as well. Pretty good, pretty cheap. 2 units of those in fact, they're identical. We've got a third unit of Canoptek Scarabs. This time it's a max unit for 80 points, so a six team here, or 6 Scarab team. We've then got the Canoptek Wraiths, as we expected, 220 points with the standard loadout, Particle Casters, Vicious Claws, as expected, and I'm expecting another unit, which there is, yeah, another 6 more to go with the second Technomancer. So one of those units will have Infiltrate, the other one will have rerolls of wound rolls of a 1, because of those Technomancer enhancements. We've got some more Tomb Blades. There's been a few Tomb Blades in this list, to be fair. I've not really considered them since the Codex, but maybe I'm missing a trick. These Tomb Blades have all got Particle Beamers and Shadow Looms. Particle Beamers have got the Blast, they've got Blast, haven't they? Just double checking. Devastating Wounds and Blast, D6 attacks, Strength 5. Not bad. The second unit is identical, so 2 units of Tomb Blades, and that sums up the entire Canoptek Court list. So that's the list in a nutshell. Let's talk about Alpha's list and the plan of action. So he's got the race that's going to be jumping on the 2 No Man's Land objectives. I mean, one of them will start off almost on 1 because of Infiltrate, but this is going to open the Power Matrix. You only need a maximum of 2 to open the Power Matrix realistically in the No Man's Land, unless there's some really unique mission rules that you've ended up with loads of objectives in the No Man's Land, but 9 times out of 10, 2 will be just enough. Now each of these Canoptek Wraith units are going to be backed up with a Catan and a Doomstalker. So one of them was a Nightbringer and the Doomstalker, and the other one's going to have the Void Dragon and a Doomstalker. So that's a lot of power going into protecting those Wraiths and those objectives and the Power Matrix in general. But objectives score you points, so we want to be keeping those objectives anyway for primaries, maybe secondaries, but importantly, Power Matrix. Imitate the Stormlord and the Plasmancer will be going with the Immortals unit. Makes sense, you need to protect the Imitate in some sort of shape or form. And there was only the Immortals I think he could have gone with in this list anyway, so yep. Plasmancer critical hits on a 5+ for Immortals, yep, that's a standard play nowadays, isn't it? Tomb Blades, Canoptek Scarabs and Immortals have the speed to double up on screen as screeners and secondary scorers. There is a bit of speed with those Immortals because they've got the Tesla, they can advance. So you're moving a standard 5, then advancing up to 6. So they've got a bit of speed with them as well, and they're still firing on top of that. And all of them can put in a pretty decent amount of damage. I mean, not so much the Canoptek Scarabs, but they're in this list. I wonder if those Scarabs could have been swapped out, because there was a total of, what was it, 80, 40 and 40. So 160 points was tied up in Scarabs there. I wonder if we could have done something else, but it's not my list. I'm not there to judge that. But yeah, the bulk of the list is benefiting from the Canoptek Court because the Canoptek or Cryptek and the two Catan are just absolutely deadly and a great distraction. So that's Alpha's list. So thank you everyone for, first of all, for watching this video, but also anybody that got involved by putting some lists forward for me to put into this video. Thank you very much. I can only select 1 list per detachment, of course. We will be doing my own personal lists, and I'll be doing battle reports with those lists in up and coming videos, so stay tuned for that. But guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.